So after we will start with Tiru, and after that we will have a session where we advertise job openings and or advertise ourselves if you are looking for a job and then you want to advertise yourself. Uh, we've had great success with that format so far. So without further ado, I invite Tiru from Google to talk about simple CI/CD. Yeah, please Tiru.
Issue, okay. And it's not working. Yeah, maybe I should be using Windows. Oh, actually, no, it does work, This is always tested. No, it's detecting the projector, it's just not showing up.
Okay.
Interesting.
Oh, wait. Too fast?
No, that's fine.
Okay, don't touch.
Don't touch it. Okay, hello everyone. Can you guys hear me at the back? Okay, awesome. So my name is Thiru. I was going to start with a little jab about how I, as a Google engineer, am in the Microsoft Office giving a talk about Google Cloud, but I think we've all well established that, so I'm not going to go over it again. So I'm a solutions engineer with Google Cloud. I work on developing architectures, solutions using Google Cloud Platform. Okay. So today I am going to try and talk to you about how to do a simple CI/CD pipeline with something that we call Cloud Build, right? And let's go. So for those of, since we are at the DevOps conference, I think we shouldn't really, the DevOps meetup, I think we shouldn't really be talking about what CI/CD is, but I will just go through it anyway. So CI usually is continuous integration. So what that means is you commit and then you build your code, right? And of course you test it. CD is delivery and deployment. So you commit to production, don't do any testing, deploy it straight to production on a Friday and go off on holiday. Sure, that's the best way to do it, right? And in other words, it's also automating everything. So it's one of the pillars of what we call DevOps, and essentially introduces automation to a significant part of the software development process. Right, and anyone here heard of DevSecOps? Right, so we haven't had enough of DevOps, and now we have DevSecOps. So the Sec stands for security in DevOps, right? Okay, so traditionally, you have your source repo. You commit your code to your source repo. Who doesn't use source code management?
It's a FTP, a source code management.
File on a floppy disk. Doesn't get better than that. Right. So now the reason I ask is I've actually had some folks who don't use source code management. They literally copy their code over to other developers using a thumb drive. So that was not entirely inaccurate.
Okay.
Yes. Then you build it and hopefully test it. You what the outcome of the build process is an artifact, and then you store that artifact somewhere, whether it's a virtual machine template or an image or a Docker image or something like that, whatever is your chosen poison. And then you deploy it into either on premises or on the cloud, right? And finally, you monitor what the output of that entire operation is, right? So you are all used to seeing these tools. These are all very popular common tools that you have. GitLab for source code repos, then Jenkins and whatever for building. Artifact management, you can put it on Docker Hub, you can store it on S3 or whatever, and of course Azure. You can also deploy it with Ansible, Terraform, and whatnot. And finally, you can do monitoring with things like CloudWatch, Datadog, Prometheus, and so on. Can you guys see it at the back? Yeah. Any questions so far? Wait, don't get too excited. Hang on. There we go. Yeah, this is our stack. Yes.
Most of us are not from the place where we need to support it so much. We are focused on delivering. So this like adds more process and delivery.
Okay. So what exactly? So you're asking why should you do this? Is it?
Yes.
In a manner of speaking. Okay. So okay, one of the things that that you actually that is best in an environment where you want faster feature delivery, right? Is this? This is sort of the foundation you need to have in your production environment, in your software development environment, that will enable you to be more agile with feature delivery. So if such a pipeline were not available, you would have to go through an extensive manual process of building your artifacts, of testing your code, and then deploying it manually. Right? This takes a lot of time, and because it's a manual process, there is a very good chance that you will fat finger the whole thing and mess up the entire environment. Right? So introducing automation into the pipeline removes a lot of the mistakes that could possibly happen. In a manner of speaking. Yes, sir. I should be afraid of questions from you. Go on. No, I have not.
So it's when you have too much automation.
Yep.
That is lies the problem.
Right.
Whereby you can't stop the pipeline when something goes wrong.
Sure.
So how would Google Products prevent such intervention? Basically having things like manual touch and
okay. The products themselves don't actually have an avenue for doing any of those things. So it's not like there is some sort of built-in intelligence or some such thing that will, pull the plug. Right? It's more about keeping the necessary people informed so that they can pull the plug when it actually becomes necessary. So things like Slack notifications, for example, or email notifications, or even stuff like using SMSs, should you swing that way, all of those are possible options that you can leverage. Yeah. Everyone okay? So yes.
you have the cloud before, right?
Yes.
But you don't have a pull request, right?
Why do you ask me these questions? That is a pending feature request.
Are we using it?
Yes, that is a pending feature request. and actually, there's also other limitations with cloud source repositories as well. You don't get all of the benefits of things like GitHub or Bitbucket. Yeah, it's a significant work in progress. So the reason why, actually no, okay, forget about that. I'll come back to that later. Right. So moving along. Yes.
Can you stop it, like CSI, can you stop it with any of the other alternatives?
Okay.
That you don't like GCP, you can you stop it?
I don't like GCP. Thanks for the honesty. Okay, so to actually use Cloud Build, you have to use source repo, but the difference is, or at least the advantage is, you can clone all of this into here. You don't have to use this as your primary source repo. So you mirror whatever that you have on other platforms. So you would actually commit to whatever that you are committing to right now, and then it will just mirror it to source repo. So source repo is sort of like a staging environment.
So we don't actually have to commit the whole thing. Okay, so let's say a team are migrating towards new cloud deployment.
Yeah.
Chances is each team will have existing tools.
Yes.
A migration will be their own project by itself.
Yes.
It also means that you don't have to commit immediately. You can migrate by stage and by application that you use.
Yes.
For example, CR and use Jenkins, for example.
Yes. Yes.
That's that one. Okay.
Yeah. So okay. Should you want to use all of the Google DevOps tools or the Cloud DevOps tools for your pipeline? Yes, you can do that. Should you not want to do that, that's fine as well. So you can actually pick and choose which elements in the pipeline you would want to maintain. Like you can use a combination of Cloud Build and Jenkins or some other tool that you have. You can deploy, you can create the artifact after deployment in another repository as well. You can push it to Docker Hub. You can push it to a cloud container registry or even S3. Yeah, it's flexible in that sense. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Sorry? Yeah. So this is not deployment yet. So we are just talking about the build process. So we're not. Yes. So this bit. Sorry. So this bit is where Kubernetes or EKS, whichever Kubernetes service or virtual machines will come in. So this is where once you do the build process, you deploy it to whichever platform you have. Or on-premises Kubernetes as well. That works too. Right? Okay. So it's just the same process. So instead of using all of those tools, we would like for you to use these tools, obviously. And you would like you to use GCP as well. Since yes, it's me trying to do some brand recognition, if that were not obvious. Okay, so let's move on to Cloud Build. What is Cloud Build? Cloud Build is essentially a managed build service. So you don't have to use something like Jenkins. You don't have to build a VM that you install and maintain with some tool that you have. So if you are already using some sort of software as a service that allows you to do builds, then this is very similar to that. Okay, as I said earlier, you have the flexibility of using any source repo that you already have, preferably GitHub or Bitbucket, which you then mirror into source repo, and then it starts the build process. So the concept of automatic build triggers should be familiar, I think, to most people, because if you're already running a deployment pipeline, then this is something that you would be doing anyway, right? And because it is a very granular sort of system, you can do custom build steps and have all of those build steps execute either in parallel or sequentially or even in a branched way. Okay, and then obviously you can deploy it to a Google service or you can deploy it to other services as well. But yeah. Okay, any questions here? How am I doing for time?
15 minutes.
Okay.
We'll put you away.
That's okay. Right. So connect to any repo that you have. Unfortunately, for now, as I said, what? Really? Don't, man, don't. Yeah, so for now, GitHub and Bitbucket. Yes, really taking the nitpicking to the next level, man. Come on. Okay, so you trigger a build based on either a branch, committing to a branch or to a specific, or with a specific tag. You can build using just the Docker file, or you can create something called a cloudbuild.yaml file, or you can trigger your builds through an API call because the Cloud Builds API is exposed. So if you have some other mechanism, if you would like to deploy some other mechanism of building, then you can do that through the API. For example, you want to use a chatbot, and then you tell the chatbot, hey chatbot, build my whatever, and then the chatbot will call the webhook and deploy it. That's something that can be done, right? Because it's a managed service, and also because this is a very important feature, you can view all of the past builds that you have. If they have any errors, you can also see what those errors were and where those artifacts were stored. Yeah, you can. Yes, through this. So how you would actually roll back is you just go to a previous build, and then there's a button that actually says build, rebuild, and then you just click it and it will deploy the new artifact again. I'm sorry, the old artifact. No. No. No, it doesn't. So you can.
So it will store on Google storage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Don't go crazy over your pull request.
Yes. What? Do you guys tag team or what? Yeah. Okay. That's a topic for another talk. Right. Okay. So it gives you timelines for specific build steps. Let's say you have 10 build steps in your cloud build pipeline or script. You can see how long each step took and the logs for each of those. So the thing about Cloud Build is it actually uses a Docker container to execute those builds, and each of those build steps creates a brand new container, executes that step, and then goes to the next step. Okay. So to answer the question about what you actually need to do that beforehand before coming here, that needs to be separate. So that would be part of your your whole key management process. Someone else had a question. Yes, you. No, not by default. I mean, not as part of the platform. So you have to use something like Vault to do key management. Yeah. Oh wait, you're talking about retention as in the artifact retention. Oh, manual. It's manual. Yeah, there's no lifecycle management for that. Okay. Remind me not to do this again.
Yeah, because it's no.
Yeah, it's right. It's right.
It's a training.
It's a hazing, bro. Okay. Again, we've covered this trigger, and then each build step goes through sequentially or parallelly, whichever, and that's how it works. So yeah, okay. So I'm actually coming to that. So let's say you have a build step that requires you to do something like clean up a certain line of code. For example, let's say you're using SED, right? So you can even put that as part of a bash script and then replace a line of code before deploying it into production. So that would be a build step. Another build step is, kubectl apply, for example, or gcloud app deploy or whatever. So all of those are executed in their own individual Docker containers, right? I'll show you how that would look like after this. So this is how that cloud build.yaml looks like. So you've got all of those elements or parameters inside that YAML file, which you can use to execute that build. Like, where do you want to log the file to? Or where do you want to output the logs to? If you want to tag it with something, you can create environment variables and stuff like that, right? So that's an example of how the build step looks like. So you have a gcloud builder, and then the arguments for the gcloud builder would be gcloud app deploy. So gcloud app deploy is what you use to deploy something to App Engine. Okay. And yes, so you can do stuff like that. You can fan out and fan in back based on the wait for parameter in the YAML file. Okay. So if you can containerize whatever that you're trying, or whatever your build step is, you can use it. So you just have to treat it in a similar way to how you actually treat your application container, and then you can use that as your build container as well. Okay. Questions so far? Yes. Yeah.
For the continuous security wise, when it does scanning, in general, what does this scan for? Does it scan for what? And stuff like that?
I will show you.
Sure.
Yeah. The exact policy it uses to scan, I'm not entirely familiar with, but it does scan for a lot of vulnerabilities. So it classifies them based on high, medium, and low vulnerabilities on the packages that you import, and also potential vulnerabilities in your code as well. Yeah. So it actually does kind of low-level scanning. Yeah. Parallelizing the what, sorry? Concurrent. Yes, so you can actually create multiple triggers based on the same repo. So you build. Yeah. Okay. No. So when you say parallel, so it builds two different things at the same time, is it?
No, like just now that one. One A, B, C, and C. A go to B, C, and then B and C go to C.
What?
This goes to the previous diagram. Yeah, this one.
Okay.
Except you parallelize B and C. Does it automatically do that, or you can specify?
I think his question is whether B and C are running concurrently or are they working.
Oh, right. Yeah. So in a manner of speaking, it is parallel, because it really depends on on the wait for. So until that prerequisite is satisfied, it's not going to go to the next step.
So B and C will start at the same time?
Possibly. Yeah.
We use that for infrastructure that can start together, like the database, whatever, for application stuff.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Right. So these were the build steps that I was talking about. So you can use the officially supported build steps, or you can also use the unofficial ones as well, or the community provided ones. So for example, one of your build steps can be the application of a Helm chart, for example, or if you want to use something like Packer, that's also possible. Or if you just want to do a very straightforward make, that's also possible. in addition to all of the stuff that you see on the left. Yep. Right. Next. Okay.
Just one question.
Yeah.
When the slide before you said commonly provided scaffold. Scaffold, if I'm not wrong, is a very developer-oriented continuous push to update.
Yes.
How would it fit into the workflow of
So scaffold is for templating of Kubernetes manifests.
container and everything it pushes?
So it actually does modifications to your manifest at deployment time or prior to deployment, right? So you can actually use scaffold to customize the manifest before deployment. So to pull the new image after it has been deployed, after it has been saved inside the registry. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Then, so this is like something super simple with the application code, the Docker file, and the YAML. Okay, everyone took a look at it. Cool. Next. Right. So what you are asking is continuous deployment even from an infrastructure perspective. So that's some people call it GitOps. I don't know what other people call it. So that's also possible. So you deploy the code, you test it, you build your code, and you modify the infrastructure as well. Right. Cool. Demo time. Sorry? Pray to demo gods, yeah.
Have you sacrificed anything today?
No, I have not.
You did it just now, so I think it's fine.
So this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to just do a simple push to my code repo, and then it triggers one cloud build to push the built image into container registry, and then it does another concurrent trigger of cloud build to push the new deployment manifest to Kubernetes. Okay. Cool. Let's see how that would work. So this is how that code looks like. This is cloud source repositories. If anyone has not seen it before, this is my code. Can everyone? Is it too small?
Yeah.
So this is the app. Very simple. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. This is how the cloud build actually looks like. So for example, I mentioned that you can use any build step, right? So this is an example of any build step. It's just pulling the 3.7 slim container, the image, and using that to do the test process. Okay, so that's kind of straightforward. How much time do I have? Yeah, it's very similar to Docker. Okay, and then let's see how that would look like. So demo gods, please be kind. Okay. Huh? No. No, I actually forgot what I'm supposed to do.
Use cap.ssh and the content.
Sure, no problem. Yep. Yes.
Nano is a perfectly fine technique. Here's a question. Is this the same source code you show us from the page just now?
Yes, so this is actually in the, where is it? Yeah, this is in the repo.
Okay, so that directory is the repository?
No. This is in source repo. So that is my working folder. So I'm going to commit it, and then hopefully you should see it here. Okay, so then
So below cannot show everything.
oh yeah, sorry, that's where Control Plus comes in. I don't think you actually need to see any of this. So damn it. Okay, come on. Okay, I'm almost done.
Push it on there.
Stop pushing him. You're pushing him.
This is the most entertaining talk I've ever given. So anyway, you should now see it here, and yeah, okay, so that's now committed. And where is my Kubernetes? Kubernetes is here, so I should be able to see the cloud build here. So because so this is the build step that I actually did. Push to master branch, and this does that build process that we looked at earlier. So the test, build, push, and then so this is the part where it actually generates the new manifest to deploy into the Kubernetes cluster, and you can see how long each of it took. Okay, so concurrent to that, it also does a secondary build process which actually pushes the Kubernetes manifest to the production cluster. So that is here. So if it works, then we should see that a new version was just deployed. So it's the second revision, and it was just deployed because of my commit, and because of Kubernetes rolling updates, you actually see two pods running at the same time, because it deploys the new pod and then gracefully kills the old pod. Okay, and yes, yeah, again, story for another day. And that's the new code running. Yeah. Thank you.
You're making pictures so everyone can see.
Oh yeah, sorry.
It's for the screen as well.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
So in practice, when you edit the code, in practice, what you do is something like coding for GitHub.
Yes.
Then push it.
Yeah.
And it will be automated in practice. In practice, it will be a script.
In practice, it would be a script. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
This is something like a best practice question. You include access to your community YAML file, the manifest with the template, .tcl. Given the scale that, let's say we have many different projects, many different types of manifest you're going to deploy, right?
Yeah.
Think of enterprise.
Yeah.
How would you basically manage those template files? Like, what's the best practice to manage them?
Okay, so the templates actually sit inside their own repo.
Okay.
And you use scaffold. You would use something like scaffold, or even you would create a Helm chart actually. So Helm, well, there's actually a lot of different ways to do it. So I think whatever fits your organization and your culture would work best, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
ถ้าพูดถึงในการคอนเทกต์ในโค้ด
Mm-hmm.
คือเราโตอินอร์ like เรา define แล้ว 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 define แล้ว
What do you mean conflicts in the code? Like
Much conflict.
merge oh.
Let's say somebody do a force push.
Yeah. Maybe not force push, but somebody working the same branch at the same time. Often happens.
Same branch at the same time. Yeah. So in this step, where am I? So let's say not this, everything worked fine. So let's see this. So here, what is this? No. This one is it? Okay. Anyway, it will show up here. Yeah. So when you're actually encountering errors, it will show up here. Yeah. Yes, I've gone into a break freeze.
What is this? Okay, so let's say we continue on the question. We put some code. There's an error. There's an error.
Okay.
So do we manually roll back or we can automatically?
No, you have to manually roll back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Manually roll back.
Yeah.
Can you show? Is it possible for you to show us the process?
Yeah. Okay.
Why would you roll back? Because it should be fast. It should be roll forward. That's good practical.
Yes, but not all places follow the best practices. So let's be pragmatic. Not everybody had the best environment on the planet. Sometimes certain things is hard because at least we shit. So.
But that's why you use GCP, right?
I'm not giving a talk again, man. Come on. No, I'm not.
I'm just curious. In practice, we will just create a new commit to fix it, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm done. Done anyway. No, lah. I'm just playing along. No. So let me see if this works. Okay, it should actually work.
There won't be too much conflict because it's not if-off. You are not actually pulling updates. You are every single time you are doing a checkout.
Yeah, that's right.
So you don't have exactly a conflict.
Yeah, because in practice when you do your code, right, you will remember the script will never pull when there is a conflict. So think of it that you have this machine that will pull from the branch, so that you will almost never pull a bad state out because you're not pushing directly to the repository. It will be a script that
You don't have a release manager?
or something like that, right? Or even somebody that manages
Taking so long.
just say go, no go.
Everybody is a release manager.
Yeah, correct. So it's about that now.
Why did it fail? Failed for some reason. Okay. Anyway, yes. Thank you, guys.
All right.
This is a. Thank you very much. Huh?
Sorry for the
Hey, no lah. I was just playing along, man. Huh? Yes.
Seriously. I don't do deploy, but how your company does deploy?
VIM source code.
No, I'm Android developer, so I mobile setup. So I just basically.
I have a question for mobile.
I just use the GitHub for development.
GitHub.
Like Fastlane or something.
Right.
Bucket, Fastlane.
Use Apple APK, right?
BK.
I have a question. Do you do iOS?
What is
Or do you do automated build with iOS? Because the session will be expired, I think, every 30 days, and you have to manually key the code in. Huh? Because the signing key, the signing authentication stuff, and this will be re-authenticated every month, every month.
Oh, but I think I already left iOS before this.
Because you're logged into.
All right.
Okay, guys. Like, Hussein, how do you do deploy? How? Circle CI. So you use Circle CI. Okay, so you guys really good practitioner of DevOps. So I have a question for Thiru. So suppose I managed to convince my boss that we should use these practices, right? But then my boss is cheapskate. He doesn't want to invest money or resources on learning this. So how, as a individual, how do I learn all this and without using too much money?
What's the source developer discussion?
That's no, that's one thing, but
David, this.
I use my referral link. Now, now, there's actually a lot of developer-focused resources on the cloud platform documentation itself. So it actually tells you even how to use third-party products, not necessarily GCP-specific products. So it even teaches you how to use Jenkins, for example, how to create a job in Jenkins, for example, and also push to Slack, for instance. So it actually gives you a lot of different examples on the documentation. And obviously there is, I think everyone knows Quick Labs. So if your boss is really not willing to spend money, I can help. My referral link.
So guys, you guys want some credits or something for us for Thiru? And Quick Labs, he mentioned is really nice. Basically, you can choose a course and then you get a sandbox environment to play around in the context of that course. Like if you are doing IAM or maybe EC2 will be.
So Quick Labs actually works with both AWS and GCP. So when there's a quest or work for a specific lab in Quick Labs, it actually provisions a real life environment for you and then takes you through a bunch of steps that you have to work on.
So it's QWIK, Quick Labs. Should check it out. Yes, if you and Arvin can you come and set up? So I'm gonna open the floor really quickly for 2-3 minutes. If anybody wants to advertise a job opening or yourself.
As always. Hi, you've probably seen me before. I've given a couple of talks, so it's fine as well. So my name is Ashrik. I'm CTO of a local startup, so we're building a next generation consumer insights platform to allow anyone to be data driven, any company to be data driven. And we're currently hitting some limits in terms of DevOps and also SRE-ish. I still can't figure out the difference between the two. But if you're interested, I don't agree with your argument. But anyways, if you're interested in working with Terraform, Kubernetes, Drone.io, any sort of CI/CD platform that you've used before, as well as working in a company that believes in Docker, so we package all of our apps are deployed via Docker images. Come talk to me after and we can discuss. Yeah, thanks. Oh, sorry, salary ranges from, I would say probably 6K above to about 12, 15, if you're really good.
Can I just
So my turn, okay. AirAsia is hiring, so we are moving from airline to a digital company, travel company. So we're hiring a lot. We need to double up. So you can check the position on careers.aasia.com. It's a workday, and you can also send it to my email so I can forward it straight away. It's much faster that way as well. So yeah, we are hiring all position. There's no referral by the way. Yeah, it's cheapskate.
You guys should have a referral. It's free, but it's
Anyone?
AirAsia.com/devaraj. Yeah.
I wish. Someone's hiring this month? One else? Okay, so I'll first go to RFA. Once it finishes setting up. So guys, the same thing applies. Just ask him, nitpick, show him no mercy. He didn't show any to Tiru just now.
Okay, so just give me 1 second. I'm just gonna set up something.
You hit the mic,
I already have. No, I don't think I need that. Yeah. Really? I think my voice is loud enough. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. Oh, come on, guys. So my talk is gonna be a little bit on the download, not too much technical like Tiru, has, because I posed a few titles to Sazwan, and he was like, hey, the audience here is not gonna know too much. But I think after seeing Tiru's, I have a bit more idea of like what I want to do. But so today is more of my journey in Service Rocket, how I went through from being a SysOps engineer to being an SRE. So yeah, without further ado. So the agenda is more about about me, about the companies that I work for, the squad that I've worked with. We've built a very good culture of a squad, and how the whole timeline of setting up the squad and also moving away from the product squad. I'm also going to be talking about that, and also what the hell is XSRE. A lot of people come up to me and ask me like, are you doing ops or are you doing dev or DevOps? And I think there's a lot of misconceptions. I'm going to slightly touch on it because it's a very controversial topic. And a day-to-day on what we do. So this is a very, I would say it gives a very good insight on like, what we do on a day-to-day basis, and some of the feats that we have accomplished. We're a very new squad, 2 quarters old, but I think we've done quite a lot of stuff, cool stuff indeed. And I'm also going to give a few credits, and finally, you guys can ask me questions, right? So I'm Arvind. I'm an SRE at Service Rocket, and these are just my details. You can check me out on GitHub, on Twitter, and also if you want to hit me on email. So Service Rocket, a lot of people come up to me and ask me this one question. There was once a lawyer of mine asked me like, do you actually service a rocket? And I met up with Arzumi from Faith one day, and I told him I'm from Service Rocket, and he was like, what? I had to explain to him. So we are made up of a very different set of BUs, but mainly the BU that I'm working for, we actually produced amazing learning management platforms. Some of our huge customers that you've heard of is Nginx, MuleSoft, Splunk. So what do they use us for? They basically use us for to put their contents on it, and so that their customers can get training for their products, right? And we have a team from Palo Alto. Basically our main office is there. We are in KL, biggest engineering office here, Chile, and also Australia. We do have 2 new offices coming up in London and Singapore, but that's in the future. And as you can see, we offer 2 kinds of products: the standard and also the enterprise model. Standard is something new. We are targeting towards the startup area, and enterprise is a full-fledged product for onboarding and knowledge management and things like that. So what the hell is actually SRE? I know I'm not allowed to use the F word, so I'm just gonna keep it on the down low. According to Stack Overflow, something that you guys shared last meetup, it's actually the highest paid and also the happiest job, and I can definitely vouch for that. I'm not saying that it's an easy job to get or get by with. It actually takes a lot of effort. That's for sure. And many of you here actually heard of SysOps, right? How many of y'all here heard of SysOps? Or sysadmin? That's a more common term. So sysops is basically someone who works with servers, someone that goes and tinkers with servers, set up the thing. And usually the traditional way of doing things is like application developers will throw over the code to the ops guys, and the ops guys will deploy that thing. And usually they have a cadence, like is it going to be a 1 month deploy or 2 weeks once deploy, things like that. And moving forward, SRE is very much how a developer takes on software engineering approaches. We want to commit, we want to deploy immediately. GitOps, something that Thiru was talking about, similar concepts we do. We also try to drive pioneering tool sets for the teams to adopt. We don't really kind of force them down their throat. That's not a good practice. We try to influence them, right? So that's what we do. And also we try to standardize approaches. So think of it like this. We standardize the approach. Say you want to run something on AWS. We will tell you, like, this is the best practices to run. But whatever you want to use in AWS, you can go ahead and use it. So we don't control on the layer of, like, what you want to use. If you like Jenkins, we will tell you, like, this is the best practices for Jenkins, and your team goes and adopts Jenkins. So that's how we kind of give the flexibility of, like, you going and adopting something, but at the same time we have a control. So we follow this concept called the border control. So you can go out and come into the border, but you need to have that border to ensure safety, right? So time traveling, this is very interesting. I think Arzumi from Faith, and also I think Lim from Mind Valley, the CTO of Mind Valley, they asked me this question: how did you, how were you able to separate the sysops guys from the product team, right? That is a very interesting question because it was very tough. 2 years. It was a 2-year vision for our director. He always wanted the product or the application developers to own operations, which is something that is very difficult to do. And many companies, you don't even give, application developers don't even have access to servers. So that is what we did. It was a hard push, and we found out a few things that lacked. Things like runbooks are missing. How do we get access to this? How do we manage this stuff? And that is when we had a lot of back and forth. So November till Jan, that is when we still were a sysop kind of a mindset, and we defined the vision, we defined the job description, and also we set up the Kanban board. And if you have read the SRE book, so Google actually has a very good SRE book. They actually specify and say that there's a block of how things should be done. So you have that 50% coding, 30% ops, and you have 20% automating tools, right? So that is something that we actually incorporated into our Kanban board. If you're actually interested, you can come and see me after the talk, and I can tell you how we did that. January till March. So our platform had a lot of problems, right? We were not stable. We were on a legacy infrastructure. Every time it would go down, we had Pingdom pinging us 3 o'clock in the morning. Supports would get pages. Turns out that some of our customers had like close to 32 gigs of RAM of heap, right? But it took only a little bit of effort of trying to do some performance testing. So we wrote some performance tests. We tuned our JVM with a lot of flags, and I can even share that with you later. And also we did something called fail fast tune for Tomcat. So what we did was that whenever the request comes in, we limited to like 30 threads that can run concurrently, because we knew that that's the application's limit. And if any more request comes in, don't hold it up on the OS level itself, because that will cause the entire container to OOM. So that's some of the insights that I want to give. We also centralized our runbooks. So we had a lot of teams having runbooks here in AWS Gitbooks. We had some running in Confluence Wiki. What we did was we chose a platform that everyone was familiar, everyone had access. Support, application engineers, business product owners, all of them came to one area, so that Wiki was the easiest for us. So that's what we said, like set a process and a standard that everyone is comfortable with. We also standardized configuration across, so we managed to reduce cost by a tremendous amount, both in our new infrastructure, which is running on Kubernetes, and also our old private cloud. And right now, this is the quarter that we are doing pretty amazing things. We are trying to define some standards on our AWS accounts. Things like how can we make visibility on trails and costing, and also what happens in your AWS accounts. So we are working on that. we're also trying to define SLOs and SLIs, which is something that I think is very important, and I'm going to show a tiny hint on like how we are doing it in Service Rocket later on. I'm also trying to revamp the on-call process to include more of the application developers itself, because previously we had ops handling the on-call, which is a bad thing because ops don't know the code. So what's the point of us getting paged at 3 o'clock in the morning just trying to restart something and go back to sleep again? So we're trying to change the mindset on like application developers should be on call as a secondary person, and the third person will be SRE. So SRE comes in as like a long-term improvement. Have you checked if the code can actually handle that kind of load and things like that? Yeah, and also two of my amazing colleagues in Chile, they're actually working on a performance benchmark design document, trying to find out things like active and passive benchmarks that we can do. We have done a few like centralized GC locking. We are also moving towards daily flame graph produce to S3. That's what we're aiming for. And also we are looking into IRMs. Because we are an enterprise product, we need to offer proper incident response or incident reports to our customers. So how can we automate that to include our runbooks, to include who to notify and things like that? So we are looking into Stackdriver, that's one. We are also looking into another tool called Response by Monzo. Yeah. You mean Stackdriver? Yeah. No, so Stackdriver, what we want to use it for is more like an aggregator of information. So you pull in things like the directory or the link for the runbook per the metric that comes in. So let's just say your CPU is too high. What are you going to do? So you have a runbook in there. Who are you going to notify? Things like that, right? I'll get to that a little later, how we actually do and what tools we use. I have a few screenshots too. So yeah.
Has anyone used SCOM for those of you in a Windows environment?
SCOM?
Operations Manager. System Center Operations Manager. So System Center is a Microsoft product. Actually was really early precursor to this model because inside SCOM you actually have automated recovery.
Yes.
You also have runbooks and playbooks essentially.
Yeah. So the moving forward was that chat ops, right? Chat ops came in and things like that. But chat ops, there are certain, there's always pros and cons, and you gotta balance what fits your requirement, and that's what we are aiming for. So yeah, we started off. We have a proper JD, a full-fledged JD on like how a manager or how a superior should pair with the younger SRE, I would say. And bring him up to speed, things as such. What kind of the vision kind of entails on things like what kind of OKRs we're trying to achieve this quarter, and in 2 years' time, where do we see ourselves? And it's very interesting to build this because it gives you a vision on like this is where we want to be, and 2 months down the road you would ask yourself like are we actually there, or what are we doing, or what are we not doing to get there, right? So yeah, myself, I'm in the team. I'm revamping the on-call schedule with PagerDuty. My manager, who's also in SRE, he's actually spiking on a collaborative incident report management. So our goal is to get collaborative first, because I think that's a problem right now that we have. Only then include things like chat ops and how to recover later on. And my two colleagues in Chile, they are working on the performance benchmark design document, which is something that's pretty cool and coming soon. So day to day, right? What do we do? Basically, SREs ensure the reliability and also the operations to run smoothly in LearnDot itself. So we have things such as capacity planning. We have things like SLOs and incident response. And this is a very good. I know this is very primitive, and we are moving towards a better way of getting this data out. So this is a sheet. All you gotta do is you gotta feed in like what instance type you're using, and also feed in all your resources that you have that is static, and then what it will give you is that an output of like, hey, this is the number of instances you can actually run. So we run an enterprise product, right? So we want to know how many number of instances you can actually run in a particular set of instance, and how can we scale later on. So this kind of sets a standard for that. In the future, we want to do it dynamically, pulling in data from AWS and automatically telling us like, hey, based on these things that you run in your cluster, this is the number of products that you can actually run. And also finally, we want to also make sure that we are always on top of our stuff that we run. Basically, the architecture, the infrastructure, the application itself. So we actually have this thing called production readiness review, which SRE runs with the team itself. They would go to the service team and ask them like, hey, do you have proper CI/CDs in place? What are you using in that? So we add them in the remarks. If they have checked that, we will check the box. And if they have certain kind of scalability or high availability issues, are we going to address them now or are we going to address them later? Things of that sort, right? So it's proven to work, and it's so far we've kind of keep things in check, which is amazing. So yeah, any questions so far? No.
So what's the tool to move forward to do this?
Okay, so in terms of capacity planning, there's a few tools like Valence, that's also pretty popular. There's also making sure that you pull in your APIs correctly. So we are trying to move towards Prometheus and Grafana for this. And immediately it will tell you like, based on these metrics, this is the number of instances you can run and this is the cost that you need to show to your product manager, right? In terms of production readiness review, we don't really have a way to move forward yet, but I think that's in the future, not now, right? And another culture that we kind of embrace in Service Rocket, which is amazing, and I think two of my colleagues there can actually vouch for it. We actually have this mentality whereby we test things out based on any number of opinions, and we try to share them and get them to adopt it, right? And I follow this quote very dearly: adoption is the best form of flattery, right? And so recently I actually tried to introduce this tool called Honeycomb. How many of you here know Honeycomb? Okay, yeah, it's an expensive tool. It's very hard to get your manager to approve that, but somehow or rather I got it to approve. But the approval is one part, right? The other part is how your members are actually gonna use it, right? And get the buy-in, because people are like, it's not a tool that I'm familiar with. I don't wanna do anything with it. So it's actually a salesman technique that you gotta embrace. So SRE is somewhat of a salesman. You have to constantly say like, this is the benefits this tool brings. You gotta go and find out like, where can you use these tools to show them that the benefits with the services that they use comes from, right? And I'm very pleased to have one of my colleagues actually trying to trace, and this is something, the topic that Sajwan and I talked about. How do you get your members to actually start tracing their own application, right? There's only a certain level you can auto instrument. Beyond that, to build context, you got to have your members build the context for them. And yeah, so we work with teams. SREs work with teams to design and implement automation, tooling, and application code, basically to improve reliability and reduce toil. So toil is something that you would do every day or every now and then. So you want to automate that kind of things. So yeah. So this is something that we do in Service Rocket. So we actually have pretty cool tools, but we are moving towards, I would say, the bleeding edge. So we do use Prometheus basically for, so try to understand this concept. If you don't, let me know. Prometheus is more for service-specific monitoring, right? Things such as like your cert manager, things such as like your cert manager is something that manages your cert. So you want to know if your cert has been successfully deployed. We also use this thing called Heptio Arc, or now it's called Valero. So it manages our backup and restore. So we want to know things like, hey, has that backup been done successfully, or has the restore been done successfully? So that is where Prometheus comes in. Prometheus is a very service-specific monitoring, right? Whether let's just say Nginx, how many number of requests Nginx has actually served, and how many of them successfully served to this particular customer, things such as of that sort. And let's just say you provision a new customer. You want to know if the DNS propagation actually works correctly, right? Those kind of monitoring, we give it to Prometheus to do. We also have Instana. Instana is a very, I wouldn't say it's too pricey because it's actually cheaper than Datadog or New Relic if you're using. But the beauty of Instana is that the moment you plug it in, it automatically discovers everything that you're using, whether it be Java, Node.js, what environment you're in, are you in a Docker environment, are you in a Kubernetes environment, everything gets done, and it does a top-down level view. So you come all the way from the host, you come down, it knows that EC2 is on a Kubernetes EC2, it knows that it's a Kubernetes component, it goes all the way down Docker, Java, JVM, then it knows Tomcat is there too. So it gives you the whole. No, none at all. None at all. Yeah, it's very minimal. I think it only uses about 140 MB of memory. CPU idles at about 0.1. Yeah, yeah. And even on the application side, it does a dynamic attach. So we are a Java/Scala shop, so it automatically or dynamically attaches to the JVM. So it not much overhead at all. Yeah. So the agent part, right? So the agent actually runs as a daemon set in each node, right? So you pay per node, but you can run as many things as you want in that node. That it doesn't get charged that way. Yeah. Yes. Oh, okay. And finally, so Honeycomb helps us do this top-down level view of what's going on, right? But let's just say we want to know in that region, a particular node that we have has an issue, right? And what is that issue? We want to tie them together and build a term that I like to call correlation. So that is where Honeycomb comes in. Honeycomb pulls things like your application metrics, pulls things like your database, what do you call latencies, things like that, and you can actually build a whole view of like, hey, where does the bottleneck actually happen, right? And you can actually compare them directly on a graph. And you can actually even do things like, heat maps and bubble ups, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, if you have more questions on that, do let me know. But yeah, this is what we have in Service Rocket. And this is something that is quite tough to execute. And I recently just started in the squad on how to actually define your SLOs. So whenever you tell your customers like, hey, I'm 99.99999% up, right? How do you actually quantify that number? And I've been having like a 2-week nightmare of a sleep trying to figure out where do you get the numbers, right? So I actually came across this very good white paper by Liz Fong Jones. She was the ex-SRE from Google, and she actually wrote this amazing booklet on like what you need to do, where you get these metrics and stuff like that. So in an SLO, you actually have a few ways to actually monitor. You have your latency, you have your availability, quality, freshness, coverage, and correctness, right? But let's just focus on latency and availability. Latency is more like, hey, when I hit the home page, I'm telling my customers that it needs to be 99.9% up. But what does that mean to me internally, right? 99.9% means that I need to serve the page request within 5 seconds. That is what I promised to them, right? But how can I measure that metric? And how we do that is that for latency we use something like pingdom's paid speed check, which tells us like all our customers are below 5 seconds, so we are safe. But if it exceeds beyond 5 seconds for a period of time, that is when things such as error budget comes in. So from that 99.9 you have a 0.1, right, of a error budget to play with. And error budgets, a lot of people tend to look at it as a bad thing. Usually what you should do with an error budget is to actually deploy risky features, right, to your customers to play around with your infrastructure or play around with your application itself. You want to test out something new, and that is where error budget comes in. So that is what we are trying to achieve. And finally, capacity planning. So this is something that I just mentioned just now, called valence. What it actually does is for critical components such as logging, such as your load balancer, how do you actually automatically increase your resources so that an application developer or SRE doesn't actually have to interfere and manually adjust the resources, right? Like your CPU, your memory, and things like that. We just set an SLO in there. We say that this is a very critical component, logging. All we need to tell that is that make sure that when it hits this number of requests, scale it up. But you got to put an upper limit to it too. So yeah. Okay. Oh, 2 minutes. Okay, I'm almost done. And this is more towards standardizations, right? And this is something that I see in a lot of organizations that I contract for. One specifically, Mind Valley. I'm also working with Faith on a lot of stuff. Is that we don't have proper processes and standards. Something that my director YC, if you're in an agile community, you would know him. He actually emphasizes on proper processes. And something that I've been working on is the proper wiki for SRE. How do you make sure that your AWS budgets are properly defined, right? How do you make sure that your audit trails are properly defined and you're aware of what's going on in your AWS accounts? How do you set up your VPC, you know, and things such as that. Reserve instances. We also have a proper way of detecting reserve instances, whether it's utilized, underutilized, or overutilized, right? And RDS, how do you monitor? How do you make sure you do upgrades? Things like that. So that is where this whole wiki comes in. And this has given SysOps engineers who used to do firefighting a lot, the flexibility to focus on things that actually matter for the business. So this kind of things actually provide, I would say, a key value to the business continuity, right? What happens if our whole, if someone attacks or gains control of our AWS account? How would you know before it's too late, right? So this kind of things prevent those things from happening. So yeah, and like I said, when your CloudTrail is there, you don't want to get emails. You don't want to affect your signal to noise ratio. That's something that I'd like to emphasize a lot on. Always make sure your signal is really high and your noise is really low. So we have things such as like a Gorilla Stack bot telling us, like, you know, someone changed security group or they deleted the security group from an account, which is, you know, dangerous thing to do. And the next step is that, you know, we also have cost visibility. We don't want someone to always go into AWS cost or billing center or Google's billing center to find out suddenly, like, hey, my EC2, you know, my EC2 spending went up really high, but I only knew it at the end of the month. You don't want that to happen. So this thing actually gives you like a daily view of, like, you know, what's actually happening in your account, what services in your company suddenly spun up something new, and, you know, you want to know it immediately, right? You don't want to know at the end of the month that you have to pay the bill. So that's what we are doing. And SRE also is trying to work on better, I would say, processes or more better practices. So we have things like disaster and recovery testing. We also have upgrades and maintenance. So every quarter, an SRE member goes to a service squad. This is what we are trying to aim for. We haven't done it yet, but we are trying to aim for. We go down and we sit down with the service application developers, and we try to tell them, like, hey, can you show me your backup? Is it actually working? Can you do a full restore right now? If I were to delete your instances, can you do a full recovery? And is your data actually valid, right? How do you do those kind of things? And we do it on a quarterly basis. And you might think, like, why quarterly basis? One time it should work. We've known that it doesn't work one time. Issues always happen. When you restore something from a backup 3 months ago, some things just go missing. So that's how we do recovery testing. And upgrades and maintenance. How do we keep our stuff always up to date? So that's why the quarterly thing is very important. And SRE has a very good quote that says that, you know, always automate something until you're out of the job. You always have to make sure that, you know, what can you do right now that you don't have to do later. So these kind of things, you would initially do it with your squad members, but ultimately they will become responsible and handling their disaster recovery and also their maintenance moving forward, right? So that's about it. Any questions on toolings, framework, and processes? Okay, so billing is actually quite interesting. I actually built a Lambda function, right? The Lambda function actually reads a cost usage report from the S3 bucket, which is a feature that AWS offers, the cloud cost usage report. I call it CUR for short. So you put it in there, you pull your Lambda every day, and my Lambda, what it does is, because I'm more interested in, we tag all our resources. So this is something that we kind of, I would say, enforce, or more of like influence our service owners to go and tag their resources. And we have a tag called product, and we have a tag called team, right? So this Lambda function will automatically pull in these features, pull in these tags, and will segregate that details and print out in a graph format using D3.js. Yeah, and then, you know, push it over to Slack, like our Slack. Yeah, and so we can see like each team and also what products they use suddenly spiked on a daily basis and on a monthly basis and also on a quarterly basis. So we do retrospective, right? Or maybe the better word would be, we plan to do retrospective in the future, is that, you know, if certain costs were to hit a certain threshold, right, we would want to sit down with the service owners and find out, like, hey, is there a better way to do this, or is this the expected outcome? Can we re-engineer something, right? So this will be a key indicator of like, when is the time should we re-engineer something, right? So is one of the metrics that we want to use. Yeah. No.
I understand that you use multiple tools to monitor multiple.
I know where this question is going here.
I guess, like, I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of alerts on top of that, and that's just too many data, but
Yep.
just
Yep.
Because I assume because you mentioned Kubernetes, you're running on microservices on top of
Yep.
right? So how do you correlate all those data back?
Okay, so I'm gonna correct a little bit there, because we don't really use Kubernetes for microservices just yet. We are actually decomposing. We actually have monolith service, but you are right. Like, there's always too much of noise in comparison to signal that you get. How we actually kind of work towards that is that, first thing, your tooling should be very good, right? And that's one of the reasons why Instana is very good. It actually has ML and also AI in there to automatically figure out if actually it's an issue, or if it's an incident, or if it's just a change, right? So don't alert me on a change or an issue, but alert me on an incident basis. But moving forward, like, how do you reduce noise? One thing that I always like to advocate, or I think even my tribe leads and my director, is like, always go back to where the noise is coming from. Try to filter out like things that you don't need, right? Maybe you have subscribed your email to too many things, right? Try and take them off. Find out what metrics actually important to you, and that's something that I'm also advocating to Mindvalley, like, because they have this app signal thing. It buzzes my phone every 2 minutes, I guess. So it's a very bad thing to do, and you usually you see Emmanuel is actually laughing there. So it's actually a bad thing to have too many things coming in, because you always lose out important things, right? And I think something that I want to share with you also is that even this, when we did this trail alert, it was very noisy. So what I did was I kind of pushed back, removed all the events that I didn't want to listen to. So I think the key is always, what are you planning to listen to, right?
So how do you then constantly? I understand there's tricky because there is a certain monolith, and also you guys also in the midst of actually bringing down.
Yeah.
Like you say, like it has to respond to 5 seconds and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if there's multiple things
Okay.
that you have to call, how do you constantly
Okay.
track those?
Okay, so that's one of the reasons why you have SLO. Okay, and SLO gives you that buffer to an engineer, saying that if it doesn't hit that SLO, if it doesn't go below 99.9, don't alert me until then, right? Because you got to know, uptime is very important. True, if something is down, definitely alert me. But sometimes some things like homepage requests, if it doesn't go beyond that threshold, I don't want to know if my homepage is slow until and when it actually is affecting a lot of customers. Then let me know. So that is where you kind of scope your things on, like, how wide of an audience I want, or how wide of an impact I want. Only then let me know. Because sometimes when you put too much of pressure, or you put too much of signal to your engineers, they're going to just get up and, like, turn off or acknowledge your call, and they just go back to sleep. And to answer your question, if you're moving from monolith to microservices, or you have too many Kubernetes events, some of the events you don't even have to listen to. Let me be frank with you, and I think there might be differing opinions. Always think of there's this term that I'm trying to think of. There is two types of alerts. There's one is cause-based alert, and there's one symptom-based alert, right? So cause-based alert is more of like your infrastructure. Your CPU is too high, your memory is too high, things like that. That all makes an engineer fatigue to an alert. Always look for symptom-based alert. Hey, can my user log in right now, right? That is the kind of alert that you want to look for. Because that is actually the alert level is actually much lower in that sense. Because a CPU might just simply spike up, and CPU usage is always wrong. There's even a video on that by Brendan Gregg. So always tune. I always say to alerts is like retune, tune back again, go back and visit your alerts, and find out which metrics you actually want to monitor. Yeah, you can even do 99, 95th, yeah, those kind of stuff.
One of them, but until they hit a certain threshold,
control.
Yeah.
It's normal like it's normal because you have GC and you have a
Yes.
CPU or those
Yes. Yeah.
IO issues.
Yeah.
But after it hitting certain threshold means that something is definitely wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
What's the magic word that you use to convince your stakeholders give you money for a honeycomb?
Oh, that's actually very okay. So, okay. It's a bit dishonest to say this, but I have a little bit of upper hand because some of the efforts that was driven when we were in sysops, stabilizing the product and everything. I guess you start to earn the trust, right? And that's the key thing that you got to do. Earn the trust. But even when earning the trust, after earning the trust, you will still have the issue whereby, hey Alvin, it's costing too much, there's always a way whereby I go around and find out like, can we not use this? Is there a way to take this off that we can bring in this other stuff? But in doing so, you got to also understand the kind of repercussions you bring to the engineer. You got to understand if we take away this tool, what will the engineers lose? And if we bring this new tool in, what kind of benefits they're getting? Or can we replace whatever that they're using with this tool and even better usage? So something recently we realized is that, and something that I think we need to kind of always reiterate is that sometimes the tools that you use are always underutilized. Something like Instana, we pay close to about 60 USD a month for one host, right? And it actually has, well, that's just one. We have New Relic, we have Datadog, we have Track.js and everything. So, so the thing is, what I realized is that when I went into Instana, I realized that there's actually a component where you can even measure websites page load and everything, and even measure errors for your JS. And we were like, why are we paying for things like Track.js anymore when this tool actually offers it, right? I think it's a very key thing to always, I think it comes from within, like an application developer or whatever not goes and checks if it's the tool, is the tool actually doing something good, or has there been updates to it that we can use it for something else. And I always kind of come back to like it starts from you and starts from the team itself. Like, is this tool being used efficiently, right? Yeah. And to convince the stakeholder, it's always a very tough thing. Very tough thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Slightly tangential.
Yeah.
Did you consider writing your own tools? Because
okay. Yeah.
you might have some really niche, very specific requirements that you think about coming up, or at least forking some of the publishers.
Okay, so I'm gonna be straightforward here. We're a small team. We try to be as efficient as we can. And it always comes back to this statement whereby, hey, in terms of having man hours and also a man effort to maintain this particular tool that we've written, how much actually we are paying for this person. And usually for us, because of our scale, it's always easier to just outsource it and get something outside. And I'm also a firm believer that we are not reinventing the wheel, so we don't really need to fork. We are not Google, and we are not Netflix or whatever not. We are just a learning management system, right? So, and I feel like whatever we do kind of works within. But I foresee in the very near future that a lot of the things that we want to achieve will come with writing our own tools. I kind of see it going that way, because currently we feel like sometimes we are missing some components, some links, and I think it's because we are kind of driven by product backlog, priority, that we have to like kind of foresee that, forego that. But I think we will get there. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
It's 9 o'clock. Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
Stop it. Thank you so much.
No problem.
So I'm sorry guys, we are like 16 minutes past 9, because you guys have so many interesting questions. I forgot to keep track of the time. So what we usually do is that we have to empty this room and building, because I promised the guys to do it by 9. Any of you guys are chill out? Are you going to makan after this?
I'm going home.
Any of you guys going to nearby makan?
We might go Kayu if anybody interested.
Kayu, yes.
So
So
there's one
New Central. So you can join if you want to chat more about DevOps or network. You can join Swimeng at Kayu New Central, wherever that is. Yes. So please do that, and thank you very much. Come again next month. And before that, can we just have everyone in front of you for a quick picture, group picture? Thank you so much.